Good afternoon. I'm pleased to join you today just to try and present you an overview how a very old, esteemed house, a museum in Antwerp tries to act with respect for people, collection, environment. I'm going to follow my notes as well because I don't want to make it too large. Good. Our goal in our museum is try to manage and preserve. This is a historic house, which I will call during the talk a museum because we are officially a museum, in a sustainable way for our current visitors and for the future generations. I'm sorry, I have a bit of a cold. I want to take you through this talk, Museum Plantin-Moretus, how we began with sustainability, which steps we took towards more sustainability, what we did for a new permanent exhibition in the museum, how we cope with audience development, give you a small evaluation or a roundup, and what we will do in the future with our museum. This is the Museum Plantin-Moretus, for the people who don't know it. It's not that well known. It's, well, almost a large historic house from the 16th and 17th century, and it's situated in the center of Antwerp. And it's a very grand house. It's, well, you can experience the 16th century feel of the printing business that was situated there in the 16th, 17th century, thanks to the centuries of care that the family gave to the collections and the house, and since 150 years to museum staff as well. The site is UNESCO World Heritage, and you've read in the newspapers that UNESCO is not that flexible when you want to change something, so it's quite a problem to try and do something about durability in this house. It's a very fragile site as well, so, well, we try to do something more about slow conservation than the grand ideas. What do we do? Well, we have had sustainability on our agenda in the museum since 2008. For us, sustainable thinking is more than just the environment and ecological. We think that it has to do everything with people, collection, and the environment. And to help to keep this alive in the museum, we have an eco team, an internal eco team. As I told, we do small steps, more small steps than we do the grand gestures. And we do this because we think that every small step helps, first of all. And secondly, we try to find a balance. If you do something which is good for nature, it's also good for the budget of the museum, and it usually is also good for the collection itself. What we also think is very important is that the staff has to carry this idea of sustainability in the museum. This we try to do with this the positive attitude. We do have sometimes large investments, of course, and which is also very important for us is that we are a member of local platforms. I will come to that as soon as possible. About our strategic goals. I told you that we had it on our agenda since 2008, but we felt that we needed to do something more structural. So starting from 2014, we are a recognized museum of the Flemish community, so we have to deliver every 5 years our new strategic memorandum, our strategic goals, and we put it on our agenda from 2014 on. Which means that we had one certain strategic goal about sustainability in our plan, which was we act with respect for people, collection, environment. In 2019, next plan, we wanted to do a strategic vision on it throughout the entire plan. So it's not one goal, but it has to come back in every other goal that we stand for us. So it has to be a touchstone, a fixed touchstone in all the actions that we take towards collection, towards public, towards the entire work of the museum. And it became also the driving force behind our renewed exhibition in 2016. The tools that we have to keep this alive for those number of years already is the eco team, an action plan, and collaboration. Let's come to that. I'm going to try to follow this anyway. The eco team is there especially to motivate our employees. And this team ensures also that sustainability is always on the agenda. We don't forget it anyway. Our internal eco team counts 4 colleagues. They come from different positions in the museum, so the administration, collection, public development, and maintenance of the building. We have 1 coordinator, and they meet monthly when they have the task to further develop our policy towards sustainability and draw action plans on a very, very concrete level. They brief at all the internal meetings, also we have guards in the museum, also at the guards meetings, they brief it. To be able to do their work, they needed to develop expertise on very specific topics. They had to embed it in daily policy, everything, public relation, communication, building management, exhibitions. They have to build a plan that copes with every aspect of the museum work. And they had to make the colleagues supporters, which is the toughest task, I think. To develop the expertise, they had a very, very good inspiration. We have in Flanders a work plan from Jonge Sla, that's called like that. We also had internal trainings with Steven Vrooman, who is in Flanders a very well-known figure, on environmental friendly purchasing. And we work together, we come together, or we used to come together with Green Track. It's an organization that's very locally based. You have one in Antwerp, you have one in Ghent, and so on. And they bring together people from, let's say, the cultural institutions. So there's more people from theaters and music organizations, and we are the only museum on that network. It's not that easy. But they collect info for us as well as about sustainable printing and materials and so on. And on base of this expertise, they built the action plan, which is a 3-year action plan, and they adapt it every year. And they also build actions. Good. The biggest task is to motivate the staff. And we try to address the colleagues with the positive attitude to stimulate them to do what we want them to do. So we try an approach which is simple, and we always communicate with the idea what you do at home you can do in a museum, and what you do in a museum to help save energy in this case, you can do at home. If they learn very well and they listen very well the last 6 years to what we said and asked them to do and so on, they will spend little money on energy today at home. I don't know whether they did it. I haven't asked it yet. Maybe this is the time. The attitude had to be very inviting. There had to be a lot of humor about it. It didn't have to be punitive. So we even gave an applause when they did something well. And that seemed to be the most sustainable approach for us in the long run. We had those playful actions like the cartoons that we had designed and which are at the door of every office and every room, which is for staff. We distributed kill switches. We had a colleague that went to put efficient computing on every computer. We listened a lot to objections. We had workshops with all the staff and all the people in the museum. And we try, since 2013, to ask people, watch out if there's too much ice in the fridges, put your lights off when you leave a room. Seep all the gaps under the doors, at the windows. We are a 16th century building, so have a lot of gaps that give a lot of cold in the rooms. After a study of the University of Ghent, we put the central heating 1 degree lower in 2016, and we will put it now 1 extra degree lower from 19 to 80 degrees, which is much better for the collection. We ask them to print as little as possible, which is rather difficult sometimes. this is how the museum looks like, and these are all those small steps that we take in the museum just to try and make a small difference. But if you do big projects, the city of Antwerp, we are a city museum, isolated the attic, not the roof, but on the floor, because that's the only thing that we are allowed to do. We're not to do anything else. They installed on our request also a lot of LED lighting. In 2014, we asked them to put LED lighting in a museum, and when they saw that within 3 years the entire lighting paid itself back by energy saving, they did all the other museums as well. We work together with special organizations, Green Track, as I told you, and the city of Antwerp has also its own what they call work climate. It's an idea that you can apply voluntary, and the first year you have to save 10% energies, and then all the next years you have to save 3% energy. And it runs from October to April, and you get a monthly update, and you get information that you can pass to your staff and so on. It works very well. It didn't run during, helaas, during the corona pandemic. We hope that they will start it again next year. Okay. What impact did we have? We did create more awareness in the museum. We can talk about sustainability nowadays with all the people in our staff. Colleagues do come and tell us when they see some shortcomings, lights are put out faster. And it's a reflex. It's becoming to be a reflex for most of the colleagues now. We do have less consumption. We do track energy consumption on an annual basis. And we get reports which helps us to build new actions. And well, the LED light was, of course, the largest investment that helped reduce energy in a very high level. We also have, this is a very small project, we want to be open and warm-hearted toward our staff. So we have a giveaway box in the place where we have lunch. People do use it. They put mainly books in it, films, CDs, and strips I have seen, sometimes candles as well, small things, and they disappear as well too. And then we do also vegetarian soup every Thursday in the winter week. So we just started. I've seen on the planning that this week it will be a Mexican vegetarian soup. And so one of the colleagues cooks for the entire team soup once a week. It's just a nice action to help people to become open-minded. That was what we do back office. And then in 2016, we wanted to launch a new presentation. We needed to launch a new presentation in the museum. We are a museum about books and paper objects, and well, they aren't be able, they can't be shown too long. The previous directors, they used to keep the presentation like it was. We felt a bit guilty towards the object. We said we need a new presentation where we build a story that is sustainable enough to be able to change the 150 paper objects, books and prints and so on, every 2 years, without changing the storyline, without changing the presentation. That was our goal. We also need to do it because, well, we see that climate change, and especially a museum in Antwerp, has a lot of problems. We have a large amount of air pollution, certainly in historic houses. Like we were going to build a new storage, which gave us the possibility to put the objects in the storage. And for the new display that we were going to set, we thought, well, we're going to try and be very, very ecological, and we're going to ask from our scenographers and all the producers who worked on it to show that they were ecological themselves. And we also wanted to have a more social, sustainable presentation for a public aspect. So, for the briefing for the scenographers, we included in all the elements that we brought together, Also, recommendations for a sustainable presentation in a new presentation. In the specifications for the contractors, we asked them to write a one-page how they accounted on sustainability. And we budgeted 10% extra on the entire budget for the new presentation to be able to pay for more sustainable materials, because they usually become more expensive than other solutions. We noticed that we were a bit too early with those actions. The producers, contractors, they didn't know how they had to cope with our question, and the city of Antwerp is an official, well, it's a public service, so they have a special way of contracting people for things, and then saying that we wanted an extra criterion on sustainability was very difficult. They never did it before. Nowadays, we know that they do have it in their way of work. So that was what we did and asked from all the people from outside of the museum. We took our responsibilities ourselves. We said that during the entire redefinition of the permanent presentation, we wanted to be able to reduce materials, to reuse a lot, to recycle and use durable materials. How do we do that? Well, reduce. Well, we had a LED light installed in 2016 in the rest of the museum. We have a very bad climate. We don't want to put all those machineries in this old house. I don't think even we are allowed to do that. UNESCO is not going to let us do it. But we had a talk with the Climate Network in the Netherlands, and they suggested us to use special curtains that keep the temperature lower in the summer, so we reduce the temperature with 3 degrees in the summer. We don't have to cool, and they keep out the light and so on, which was good. And we have 6 doors that the public uses to come in the inner courtyard, and we don't have a corridor between them, so have a lot of cold that comes in the winter, and we hang leather curtains at the outside of it to keep the cold outside, which helped. And then we had to build this content way and this story so that we didn't have to change a lot when we have to change objects. I come to that as well. Reuse. We said to the scenographers that they had to reuse as much as possible from the permanent presentation that was already there, and they were not allowed to make a lot of new display cases or furniture or whatever. They had to use it. They did it. They managed to do that. We wanted to change as little as possible at the museum itself, at the house. We can't change much. We are a book museum, so we have a printed visitor guide, which is that thick, in 5 languages: Dutch, French, German, English, and Spanish. We reuse them. They're not for sale. We reuse them. People can't take them home. So we do that for reuse. Recycle. Well, all the materials that were used by the contractors had to be recyclable: wood, steel. Old curtains from the museum became clothing for children's workshops. And reusable materials that we could not recycle were put on a special website that was built by Bruges, and other cultural organizations could come and get them from us. Most of our glass cases that we couldn't reuse went to, let's say, small historical partners in Flanders. Durable materials. We opted for wood. The indoor paints are 18th century recipes, so they are good. Textiles were used for all the large texts in the museum. We have very, very little digital and electronic equipment in the museum presentation as well. And all the lighting had to be LED lighting, also reading lights and so on. The info labels next to the works are printed on paper, and we use scoreboard holders for the books. So that's all recyclable in a way. That's what we did with the permanent presentation. Does it work? Yes, we change every 2 years the presentation, and it does work. We have little material that we have to throw away. We can reuse everything. In 2026, we are going to adapt it, but that's more because we want to do something for the public. We want to make it more, we will bring more multi-perspectivity in our presentation. I also wanted to tells something about audience development, because we think that if you have very interesting projects on audience development, you give people the chance to grow in what they are as people who live in my country. We wanted to become an open house for non-Dutch speaking newcomers in Antwerp. We built long-term cooperations with partners in Antwerp. We want to try and involve a lot of people. We do a lot of participation projects in our house. We did it for the last 3 exhibitions, and we will do it also for the new presentation in 2026. And the multitude of perspectives we will introduce in our renovation of the new presentation. We're not going to change as much as the last time, we just have to change a few stories. I want to present you 2 projects. We have Cloud of Words, like we call it. Christophe Plantin, the founder of the business and the house, he was a Frenchman, so he was a newcomer, and a foreign language newcomer. And through this past and this heritage that we have, we want that the Museum Plantin-Moretus continues to support all foreign language newcomers in the city. There's no better place to learn Dutch, we think, than in our house. So we started the project, first of all, for young people, disabled, who had problems with hearing, and we're a forgotten generation in the group of newcomers. We did this project together with COCA, which is an organization specialized for deaf people. We made this project where they learn to talk about objects and words that are very, very near to themselves. It was such a great success that the official organization for newcomers in Antwerp asked to enlarge it so that they could come as well. So in the second generation of this project, we enlarged it to adults who come to learn Dutch in our museum, which is very nice because we also have Arabic type in the museum, we have Hebrew type in the museum, Ethiopian type in the museum, because they used to print in those languages as well in the 16th and 17th century. So we can start from their context and relation. And we also had a spin-off for young refugees who didn't have any schooling at all in their hometown, and they come to our house and learn Dutch and design and print their own first dictionary that they have. And they're very proud on those projects as well. So that's Cloud of Words. We're going to now progress to the 3rd generation of the project, 6 years old. And then we have Culture Friends. That's a project where we bring together a high school together with young people with a disability, multiple disabilities. They meet each other 7, 8 times during the cultural years. They work together, they become partners. And after asking the people from the high school how they felt in it, we saw that they grew in their responsibility toward other people and became more open. So we started it, I think, 8 years ago. We work now together with 3 high schools, and it's not only enlarged in numbers of schools, but also other museums stepped into the project to learn people to come together and have respect for each other. So I think those are projects that give you an idea of how we think that we should work towards sustainability. And on evaluation, what did we learn from all what we did? We do need those partnerships. We can't do it alone. We find our partners in very unexpected circles. We learn from it together. All our partners are equal partners. And it helps us building long-lasting relationships. What we will learn on sustainable investment, everything that we invested means that what we do on it in the long run, it will become cheaper for us. Our partners teach each other skills that give them ownership of the process themselves, and they don't have to start a new and invent a new project from themselves. They can build on experience from others. And we are now deepening and broadening it, which is also one very strong point in the evaluation, which is not on this slide, is that coaching of the staff is an ongoing business. It's something that we notice that we will never be able to relax on. We have to do it constantly. And in communication, we think it's very important to communicate towards the public. So we have on the website a page on how we work with the museum, and we also have in-house itself communication on what we do on recycling and so on. Because we see it so broad, we started also in 2019 to look at the agenda of the United Nations, what they have as strategic goals, and we now related and translated our work as a museum to the SDGs of the United Nations. The advantage of the United Nations is that if we talk to internationally to other colleagues, we have a universal language and a universal context that we can talk about it. And we also use the agenda of 2030 to make the blind spots visible in our own work. We think that heritage institutions can achieve a lot from all those relationships and trying to do adjustments and commit themselves to it. Our next big step is in 2026, when the museum celebrates its 150th anniversary. Then we want to prove that we have concrete and testable results in our next steps that we set. That's just about it. I hope it made some sense for you. Thank you.